Hi guys, I just thought I would do a very short video on the topic of reading fluency. I know we're not in our schools at the moment working with children directly, but I thought it was just maybe interesting discussion really for ourselves, and that it would be just something that we could maybe bring back to our schools in September. I think reading fluency is hugely important. I suppose we're very good at teaching children phonics and sight words and all the other important components. But really talking and looking at reading fluency from day one um, in our reading instruction with the children is super important. Someone that I'm very influenced by is Mary Clay. I suppose I'm reading recovery trained myself, and I did reading recovery for 8 years back in the class now. And I suppose really everything about Mary Clay's work is so influential in what I'm doing in the classroom now with my first class. But this quote is just one that stands out to me. And I suppose she's talking here about that fluency is not something that a child has when they get to a particular level, that actually it's not a stage of development at all, that what we should be looking for for fluent reading from a child at even pre-readers, reading level ones. And I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. She talks about fluency changing and that it's fluid and that it's really dependent upon what the reader is reading. So we all know that children's reading will sound different if they're reading fiction and non-fiction, and the purpose is different, so the sound of the reading is going to be different as well. Their familiarity with the words and the amount of practice with reading the text as well. So I'm going to talk about that in a second when we talk about familiar reading. So I try to kind of just break it down, and there's lots of different versions of this. So I suppose I've put together a couple of different um, images or theories that would say these are the various components of what reading fluency is. So the three main things, I suppose, you're looking at accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. So if we start with accuracy, we're all really good and strong in our teaching and this, I think, around decoding on the run. So that's kind of breaking down our phonics and all of that. Quick word recognition, so there's our sight words, our tricky words. So really good on that, I think we are. Um, Going over then to the automaticity, so like looking at things like how quick we are in terms of pace in reading, um, how quick are we to bring everything together, like we're talking about juncture here. So juncture would be the children's ability to differentiate between I scream and ice cream. So in their reading and in their oral language skills, that's very much brought in there. The other ones then around phrasing, expression, pitch, intonation, stress, that's all comes under the umbrella of prosody. So if I very quickly go through, so stress is the emphasis or loudness with with which syllables are pronounced. Okay, so that's basically how we pronounce words. Pitch is the high or low quality of of our voices. So caused by, I suppose, the vibration of the vocal cords. So pitch is kind of um, it can rise and it can fall, and that's where intonation is very much linked as well. So our intonation generally falls when we come to a full stop. So you might say something like, I saw a black and white cat, and your voice goes down so your pitch is going down to conclude that it's the end of the sentence. Whereas if we were asking a question, it might be, did you see the black and white cat? Your voice might, your intonation would rise at the end of the sentence. So that's what that's about. And you can hear that a lot, especially where children are searching for meaning when they're reading, and you can hear the voice going up at the end. They're not recognizing the full stop or the comma. So that's a really good indication. If the pitch is right and the intonation is there, and the rise and fall of the voice, that will tell you whether the comprehension is there as well. Okay. Um, what else have we got? So expression then is around, I suppose, bringing in their oral language skills, bringing in how they actually speak. And I've often been in a situation where certain children might find this really difficult, and for a number of reasons, really. It could be they're just quite shy, and they're not used to reading for an audience. Um, but also what you have to consider here is how expressive is the child in their everyday speech, because they're not going to, you know, if they're quite monotone in how they speak, they're not going to be able to maybe bring that or change that in their reading. So we have to bear that in mind as well. So without getting too technical, I suppose so that's a lot that they have to do in terms of fluency, bringing it all together, bringing this, the decoding, the sight word recognition, make, I suppose, having the pace good so that comprehension isn't lost, and then doing all of these other things, the phrasing, expression, the stress, the juncture, all of those. Um, it's quite a challenge for the beginning reader, really. Okay. So what can we do then as teachers? So the instructional procedure is promoting fluent phrase reading, and that's what we want our kids to be doing. So number one thing is modeling good phrasing, and I have a couple of slides coming up there now that will indicate, or sorry, that will show you just samples of text and how we might be able to do these um, particular procedures, I suppose. So modeling has to happen, and that can even be done from like junior infant day one reading a big book. So modeling good phrase reading and being careful, I suppose, where we might be kind of modeling concepts about print as well, where we're pointing at words, showing them directionality and all of that, but making sure all the time that our reading always sounds phrased and fluent ourselves. So select texts that facilitate fluent reading. So I'll talk about that again in a second. I suppose non-fiction texts, you absolutely can sound fluent on a non-fiction text, but I think for beginning readers, I do tend to stick to fiction until I'm quite confident that there's no staccato reading, it's not very monotone, that there's a bit that they've put a bit together in terms of like expression, intonation, and all of that first. They absolutely need to reread familiar text. They need opportunities to, I suppose, go back over the same text that they've read on other occasions. And I always have kids that say, but we've read this already. But in my class, they now know that actually good readers practice, skills on the same text no more than a soccer player will practice the same skill over and over and over again. That's what I try to explain. That's how I explain it to the children, that that's what we have to do. And maybe we could look out for something that we didn't notice the first time we read it on a new book, because I suppose we're attending to different information at that stage. Appealing to the reader's oral language skills. So I always say to them, make your reading sound like you're talking. Okay, especially for children that maybe kind of sound robot-like or have a monotone, if they're monotone in their reading, that you would say, do we talk like that? So we want to try, and that's their aim, that they want to make it sound like how they speak. And then encourage fast recognition in reading, and then fast construction in writing. So everything we want the children to do, we want them to do it at a quick pace. And absolutely, children have to slow down when they're decoding out tricky words. But what we expect is that once they've decoded that word, that they pick the pace back up again. And we know the close relationship between reading and writing, and what we know in reading we can apply to writing and vice versa, so that we're trying to build that same automaticity in reading and in writing at the same time, showing them that it's like a pair of hands working together. So this is just, I don't know if you're familiar with the PM series, but this is what they kind of use in reading recovery, and this is what we use for literacy liftoff and guided reading. So this is just a level 2 book, just a sample of that. So basically all the children are doing at this stage is they are probably practicing one-to-one correspondence, practicing directionality, and they have the return sweep in there from school down onto down onto the next word on. So I suppose it's very, very basic reading, but even at this level, I wouldn't be accepting I go to school on a bike, and that can happen because you're probably getting them to point to every word. They're working on making the words match with their finger. But even doing that, they can still make it sound fluent. I go to school on a bike, that we have to make it sound like we're talking. So even at those early levels, don't let them have the experience of reading from level 1 to 6 or 7 and then ask them for nice phrased fluent reading. We expect it from level 1s. So that's just an example of that. This is a level 10, The House on the Hill, and like we were talking about, books that lend themselves very well to developed fluent phrase reading. This is definitely one of them. It's there's some repetitive phrases in there, like the fairy tales are very good as well. So here you have the comma introduced, you have speech, you have a question mark. So like again, you're looking for the rising intonation at the end there, but who will help me? And showing them as well, I suppose, a discussion point around, at the speech mark. So that's when we change our voice because we know someone's speaking, and then having the conversation about who is speaking and what are they asking. Okay. So there's great opportunities there, just even on that one page. So if you were, hopefully when we all get back to our classes and we're in our guided reading sessions or whatever it is, then this is what we're looking for, in their reading. This is a level 12, it's the Clever Penguins. So again, here you have the speech, and again around the phrasing. So like, you don't want children saying, "Here I am," he said to Mother Penguin. What you want is, "Here I am." So you might have to like put your two fingers on either end of that phrase and just show them that those words actually go together. No more than once upon a time or one day. We can see one day there, or that we know Father Penguin. So every time they see father, they have to know in this story that it's going to be followed by the word penguin. The same with Mother Penguin. So that could be a teaching point for the child or for the group that really need to practice, not word by word reading, that they're reading in phrases really at this stage. This is a level 21, so just showing you how the complexity of the text is moving on and developing with each level. So this is a level 21, Trixie's Holiday. So again, you have a bit of speech, you have the question mark, you have your commas, and even in, say, the first sentence there, it's broken up on 3 lines. So again, there's opportunity for phrasing there. So it would be, Trixie was a little white mouse who lived in a cage in Bridget's classroom. So you can talk about, they can read all the way to the full stop, or for the child that's still kind of staccato, you might get them just to read to the end of the line. So there's lots of different things you can do. Huge opportunity for working on fluency. And I would say that really the most important thing that you could do is giving them opportunities to reread those texts. So if you're not doing literacy liftoff or anything like that, if you're doing guided reading, or even if you're using a class reader, if that's all you have in your school, that they get the opportunity to go back and reread, work and work on different things on a text. So you might spend a day on, okay, let's read these couple of pages and let's work on word, like let's be word detectives, and you're focusing maybe at word level. But then your next focus might be, now let's all change our voice at the speech marks, or let's notice the question mark, and this is how we would read this sentence. So there's so much you can do by giving the opportunity to go back and delving deeper into the text. So that's a very, very quick rundown on reading fluency, and there's so much more I could talk about, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there, and as a just, I suppose, a discussion point really. So if you've any feedback or comments or questions, maybe just pop them in the comments. Okay, take care.